I want to introduce you to an incredible advocate for the atheist community. His name's Seth Andrews. Do you know him? I'm going to read his bio here, but he told me to make him sound sexy. I don't know how necessarily to do that, but I'm going to try my best. Seth is a former evangelical and Christian broadcaster who now hosts The Thinking Atheist, one of the most popular podcasts and online atheist communities in the world. He's authored 5 books, including his latest offering, Christianity Made Me Talk Like an Idiot. That's a good name. With a mix of humor and heart, Seth has spoken for audiences large and small in the United States, Canada, Europe, and Australia about his former faith, the promotion of science and skepticism, the importance of humanism in this crazy world, and why we should all pursue a personal relationship with reality. Please welcome from Tulsa, Oklahoma, the very sexy Seth Andrews.
Thank you. Yeah, they put me up at the end of the day. Everybody's tired and hungry. Been sitting in a chair. I was waiting for a golf clap, ladies and gentlemen, Seth. It's so nice to be here, though. It really is an honor, and on such a beautiful day, I heard you guys had triple digits last year. You were like bacon cooking in the sun, and yet today it's absolutely perfect. I want to take a journey if we can, and this will occasionally, I think, drop into some dark places, but I have a better destination, so just bear with me. I know that at an event like this, in this culture, we hear a lot of, hey, Christian nationalism is dangerous and things kind of suck. And so I come on the heels of a lot of that. But I've been thinking about a statement that Christopher Hitchens gave in an article like 13 years ago. He said, how dismal it is to see present-day Americans yearning for the very orthodoxy that their country was founded to escape. Hashtag irony, right? Orthodoxy, right belief, accepted creeds, a movement that claims glory and condemns heresy. And I have been thinking about the symbols and rituals that orthodoxies have long used. Now, I'm going to ask a rhetorical question, but I have a feeling that many of you have been thinking and feeling what I have been thinking and feeling. And what I'm about to ask, and what I'm going to say is loaded with a bunch of buzzwords. Don't stiffen your spine. Don't necessarily check out. Hear what I have to say, and let's talk about it when it's all over, okay? I went to a basketball game with my dad. This was in the, early 90s. I went to a basketball game with Dad in 1990. This was right after the Gulf War to liberate Kuwait had started. And so Americans at that time were really throwing the word freedom around. Freedom, freedom, free America. We're going to free Kuwait. Let freedom ring. And the stars and stripes were waving, and there was all kinds of America talk about how we were going to liberate the world. So before the game started, it was time for the presentation of the flag and the Pledge of Allegiance and the singing of the national anthem and all that, right? And I will never forget the zeal that I heard and the passion coming out of that packed stadium, right? Hand over heart. We filled that place with our voices. And the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. And for a kid like me, somebody who was raised on God bless the USA, it was kind of a religious experience. I was baptized in feeling and conviction, and all the necessary ingredients were there in that moment, right? We had an Oklahoma crowd, we had the anthem, the reverence, the Godspeak, the national pride, the liberation mission, and punctuating everything were the stars and stripes, the big flag that was hanging down from the ceiling of the auditorium. Now, I was a young man. I did not really understand the politics of the Middle East. I understood invasion. I understood oppression. I get the basics. And I did and still do see so many good people who were kicked in the teeth by dictators and oppressors and invaders and kings and wannabe kings to be free. I mean, that's a worthy ideal, I think, for ourselves and for all of us. But what has changed, and this is what I'm wondering if you're feeling, what has changed is the emotional kick I get, the feeling that hits me whenever I see the American flag today, as opposed to, say, 20 years ago. It just hits different. I used to see a flag that waved on somebody's front porch, or I'm driving down the highway and it's flying on a highway fence or something. I see the stars and stripes on somebody's car or truck, and I would say, yeah, they love their country. And yet we have seen the same symbol co-opted by some of the worst people in the country, right? Doing the worst stuff. In February of 2020, Donald Trump, he was taking the stage at the Conservative Political Action Committee event, CPAC, and he went over and he hugged and kissed the flag. You guys have seen the photo. The CPAC crowd went crazy. Oh yeah, love of country, literal love of country. In the footage, January 6th, the Capitol rioters, patriots, quote unquote, patriots carried the flag as they smashed in, all right? They smashed through the glass, and ran through the tear gas, and occupied the building. Pete Hegseth, Defense Secretary, just gave that big bombastic speech in front of all the admirals and generals. Did you see his backdrop? Right out of the old George C. Scott movie, Patton, the American flag behind him. I mean, that's theater. It was messaging. How many white supremacist groups lead with the American flag? And so when I see that emblem, I see the car flag, I see it flying on a pole in somebody's yard, whatever, I will admit, I am guilty. I will start assuming stuff about the person flying the flag. Am I the only one who's going through this? Right or wrong, my brain starts ticking boxes. Right-wing, white-skinned Fox Newser? Probably. Pro-AR-15? Probably. Evolution denier? Okay. Election denier? COVID denier? LGBT rights denier? Climate change denier? And very possibly, for whatever reason, somebody who has decided that America needs somebody as president who can simply smash everything down, this perverted system that has been taken over by the woke, lib, demonic, whoever we're supposed to be, and a new nation that resembles the old nation can be rebuilt in the image of our founding fathers. We will be great again, a Christian nation, the Bible and prayer in school, 10 Commandments plaques in our public institutions, presidential prayers to the Christian God. And it's all happening under that big waving flag that's supposed to represent all of us. When I was a God and country Christian, I used to gravitate to this stuff. And there were things that I really felt were sacred. I mean, I've used the word. And the flag was sacred to me. I wouldn't have fallen for Trump. I know that much when I was a believer. But I might have leaned into the whole anybody burning the flag should go to jail thing. I might have gone there or be penalized in some way because the flag is sacred. You're an American. That's the American flag. And since that time, I've come to challenge a lot of that stuff. A lot of the objects and ideas that were called sacred, they were called off limits. You can't touch them, can't do anything with them, right? They are over here. You shall not pass. Don't doubt or desecrate it. Don't doubt or desecrate the Bible. It's sacred. Don't protest your country, especially in public. That's sacred. Don't offend the flag. It's not just the standard for America. In some ways, it is America. Love it or leave it. You guys have all heard that one. Love it or leave it. But the flag hits different. I don't see the stars and the stripes, the stripes representing the 13 original colonies and the stars representing the states of the Union. I see something that's been turned into a weapon It doesn't feel inclusive at all. It doesn't feel like freedom. Not if you oppose Christian nationalism, or if you're non-hetero, or you're not white and right, or you don't believe America is necessarily better than anybody else. I mean, how many hashtag great Americans don't wave the flag, but they do more. They try to suffocate you with it. How many kings and tyrants have wrapped themselves in those types of symbols, the sacred symbols, the colors of the kingdom? North Carolina Army veteran Jan Carey served in Iraq and Afghanistan. He recently in Lafayette Park set fire to the American flag because he believes, as a veteran, if you're not free to burn the flag, you're not free. And I think I agree. Criticize the act, you can hate the act, protest the act, but a truly free country doesn't jail people because they burn a piece of fabric, no matter what the pattern is. That's the stuff of North Korea, Afghanistan, Russia. Today's American message seems to be, you're free if it's okay with me. Elementary school, and I went to a Christian school, right? So every day we had a ritual, and we pledged our allegiance to three sacred things, right? We had the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now, I was a kid. Had you taken me in fourth grade and said, hey, can you define for me what an allegiance is? I had no idea what you were talking about, right? I pledge allegiance to the flag. I didn't know what it meant. What's a republic? No idea. I'm in fourth grade. I don't know what a republic is, but I just pledged allegiance to it because that's the right thing to do, you know? Where in the Constitution is God mentioned? I have no idea. I haven't read the Constitution. Were the founding fathers all Christians? Yes, of course they were. Right? How did I know that? Well, a Christian parent, guardian, pastor, teacher, somebody told me so. There is also the irony in this one little fact that is often unknown by God and country pledge and flag zealots, beyond the fact that the Pledge of Allegiance was not written to be a national oath. It started actually to be printed in a youth magazine. Its author, Francis Bellamy, was a socialist. Oh, the irony is awesome. Francis Bellamy was a Christian socialist. He believed in Jesus, but he thought Jesus would be offended by class systems. He wasn't a capitalist, he was a socialist, right? Broadcast that little detail on Newsmax and see how it goes over tomorrow, right? If I had told myself that I would start to question this ritual, this rote national allegiance oath, I would have called you crazy many years ago. Not pledging my allegiance would be disloyal. It would be insulting to every veteran who fought and died for my freedom. It might even be traitorous. But the pledge, like the flag, seems to have become a weapon. Americans are taking the pledge a lot like Catholics take the sacraments. Have you noticed? It's sacred. It requires participation if you are going to be a true patriot. Back when Pete Hegseth was a Fox News host, he did this segment back in 2018 where he staged a bunch of school children in front of their desks, right hands over their hearts, left hands holding a tiny American flag, and he had them all recite the Pledge of Allegiance. And then Hegseth tweeted that parents and teachers should, quote, demand patriotism in our classrooms. Nothing says personal freedoms like forced loyalty. And anybody who freely opts out, how are they treated in this country? NFL quarterback Colin Kaepernick, he's the obvious example. Is that symbolic or something? What? I did not rig that. I did not cause that. The flag is angry. You're very kind. Colin Kaepernick, NFL quarterback, of course, is probably the most famous example. 2016, right? He took the knee to protest systemic racism in this country. How was he treated? He became Judas. 3 years after that, Michigan Grand Valley State University, a student group that was meeting once a week, decided to remove the pledge from their meeting. They're not going to start the meeting with the pledge. They thought, well, we don't want to other anybody and we don't really need it. You know, there are plenty of pledges out there. So they removed the pledge from the meeting. And what happened? They got roasted in the media, received so much pressure, they immediately put it back in and said, whoops, sorry about that. That same year, 2019, there was a first-year student at Manchester High School in Akron, Ohio. She was banished to the principal's office for not reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. And the principal of Manhattan Beach, California's Mira Costa High School actually patrolled the hallways of his school, looking in the windows, opening doors, to make sure no one opted out of the pledge. It was mandated, it was required, it was sacred. 11 years ago, the American Humanist Association launched this controversial campaign. It was called Boycott the Pledge. And the tagline was, sit for the pledge, stand for the Constitution. And the AHA quoted United States Supreme Court Justice Robert Jackson, and he famously said these words. He said, quote, if there is any fixed star in our constitutional constellation, it is that no official, high or petty, can prescribe what shall be orthodox in politics, nationalism, religion, or other matters of opinion, or force citizens to confess by word or act their faith therein. That quote was part of a famous 1944 Supreme Court ruling on a required flag salute in our public schools in this country. And yet in our free country, let's say we want to recite the pledge but leave out under God. Because the original language from Francis Bellamy did not have under God. If you skip over that part, you are anti-Christian. If you are anti-Christian, you are anti-American. Omitting God from the pledge is almost worse than just staying seated outright. Now, I'm not telling you anything new when I explain that In God We Trust did not get printed on the coins in this country until around the time of the Civil War. It didn't appear on our paper money until the 1950s. Eisenhower added under God to the pledge in 1954. The original motto for this country was not In God We Trust. It was E pluribus unum, out of many one. The Declaration of Independence refers to a creator, but the word God appears nowhere in our Constitution, the governing document of the United States, and the only reference to religion is the Establishment Clause separating religion and government. Many of the founding fathers did believe in God. Many followed the teachings of Jesus, but they did not ever intend a Christian nation. And I have receipts to back up this claim. Now, the founders are often called sacred. Have you noticed the way God and country patriotism approaches our founders? It's like they've been sainted. You know, it's like they can never be questioned because they're almost mini gods or proxy gods themselves. And yet they were very much flawed men and products of their time. They were not extra human. They were not saintly men. I mean, yeah, they dumped the tea. And they rebelled against the king, and they engineered the revolution with a nobility and a wisdom that did become the stuff of history. In many ways, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, Thomas Paine, Benjamin Franklin, they were remarkable people, and the American experiment remains, in concept anyway, a remarkable idea. But there weren't saints. Yeah, they began a nation for we the people, and became these sort of pristine oil paintings in our minds as well as in our government halls. But they were also problematic people. I mean, how many of the signers of the Declaration of Independence were slave owners? They banned women from leadership. They were not, as we say, part of the knowledge economy. I mean, let's face it, if the founding fathers got teleported into the year 2025, they might have thought Wi-Fi was witchcraft, right? They would not have understood what was going on. The Second Amendment was brought into our laws around the time when a well-regulated militia made sense in a new nation, and the primitive weapons fired maybe 2 or 3 manually loaded shots a minute with an effective range of maybe 300 yards. The idea of an AR-15 firing 60 rounds a minute at 3,200 feet a second would not have even occurred to them when they wrote the Second Amendment. And yet the Second Amendment is considered sacred and untouchable. You can't modify it. You can't do anything with it. That's what the founders intended. In the late 18th century state of Connecticut, the Danbury Baptist Association was not happy. Connecticut was different than a lot of other states at that time because they actually kind of had a state church, and it was controlled by the Congregationalists. And the Congregationalists were supported in some ways by taxpayer money, right? So those who were not Congregationalists in Connecticut were worried that they were going to start being treated like second-class citizens. Hey, wait a minute. You got one religious party in control. We're afraid that they're going to sit at the head of the table and we're going to get the scraps, right? This bothers us. So in 1790, under this looming shadow of a state theism favoring one faith, the Congregationalists, the Danbury Baptist Association was formed, and they organized to dissent and push back on majority rule. And they wrote this official letter to Thomas Jefferson, December of 1801. That letter included these words, and I quote, "Our sentiments are uniformly on the side of religious liberty, that religion is at all times and places a matter between God and individuals, that no man ought to suffer in name, person, or effects on account of his religious opinions, and that the legitimate power of civil government extends no further than to punish the man who works ill to his neighbor." And the letter went on to talk about other stuff, those who seek after power and gain under the pretense of government and religion would be the enemy of religion and law and good order. So the message that they had essentially was, hey, Thomas Jefferson, congratulations on your election to the presidency. Religion is a private thing, not a state thing, and we're nervous that the Congregationalists are going to be running the show and we're going to become second-class citizens. We know Connecticut is not supposed to be a church. That's what they were saying in the letter, right? January 1st, 1802, Thomas Jefferson wrote a reply. And he said this, quote, "Believing with you that religion is a matter which lies solely between man and his God, that he owes account to none other for his faith or his worship, that the legislative powers of government reach actions only and not opinions, I contemplate with sovereign reverence that act of the whole American people which declared that their legislature should make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, thus building a wall of separation between church and state." Liars, pseudo-historians like David Barton say that Thomas Jefferson and the other founders wanted a Christian nation. Those are the receipts. And there are many others. Did Thomas Jefferson adhere to some of Jesus's philosophies? Yeah, it sure looks like it. But the apologists who say that he was a Bible literalist devout Christian have to explain why Thomas Jefferson took a knife and he sliced out all the supernatural stuff that Jesus did in the Gospels. He cut out the miracles and left just the philosophies. And that Jefferson Bible is currently on display at the Smithsonian. Historians believe Thomas Jefferson was more a deist, not a theist. Back in 1776, this is just a few months after the writing of the Declaration of Independence, Jefferson borrowed from the English philosopher John Locke when he wrote in his notes these words, quote, "Neither pagan nor Muslim nor Jew ought to be excluded from the civil rights of the Commonwealth because of his religion." Some of Thomas Jefferson's contemporaries were scandalized because he owned a Koran. That sounds pretty inclusive, refreshingly American. In his book, The Age of Reason, Thomas Paine said he believed in God, but, quote, all national institutions of churches, whether Jewish, Christian, or Turkish, appear to me no other than human inventions set up to terrify and enslave mankind and monopolize power and profit. George Washington's personal religious beliefs continue to be debated, but even in his speech to a Hebrew congregation, and this was in August of 1790, he said this, quote, all possess a like liberty of conscience and immunities of citizenship. All, not Christians, all. Benjamin Franklin was a deist. How do we know? He told us. He was raised strict Calvinist. He'd become skeptical of the church. He would invoke God or a supreme being in his adult life in sometimes confusing ways, but he saw ethical behavior beyond any single faith. He once advised that people should do this, and I quote, imitate Jesus and Socrates. 1796, the U.S. wanted to secure commercial shipping rights and protect our ships in the Mediterranean Sea connected to Tripoli, modern-day Libya. And those waters had been plagued for like 300 years by privateers and pirates who were operating out of North Africa. And we needed guarantees of rights and protections of our ships on the seas. So as a guarantee to Tripoli that we would not become Christian colonizers, if you allow our ships protected access to those waters, we promise we will not become Christian colonizers in your Muslim lands. The famous Treaty of Tripoli was drawn up, signed by John Adams, and it includes these words: the government of the United States of America is not in any sense founded on the Christian religion. Could the man be any more clear? John Adams was a Unitarian. He didn't believe in the Trinity. How scandalous is that? He liked a lot about Christianity, but in a 1799 letter he wrote to his own wife, he said that his belief, quote, excludes superstition. So how would the founders feel if we teleported him right here, right now? What might they say about the White House posting online portraits of President Donald Trump wearing a crown like King George III? Would they be proud to see the flag dragged through the tear gas and broken windows of our Capitol building? Would they want citizens to be forced into little cookie cutters that happen to be shaped like American flags, like our borders? Would they, as immigrants, celebrate or grieve how we treat immigrants today? Might they stand with us here on the California State Capitol steps to lament the divided states of America? Divided on almost everything. Opinions, gender, religion, color, culture, philosophies, values. Opinions and positions this close to getting somebody excluded, accused, deleted, arrested, threatened, or worse. How might Washington, Jefferson, Adams, Paine, and Franklin thought about a president who likes to wave a Bible he does not read, grifting and abusing within a secular nation he does not represent, shoving Project 2025 down the throats of people who don't want it, and that's the majority of people, forcing allegiance to the state instead of an allegiance to something that's much larger and more important, a personal oath to protect democracy, equality, humanity. If you think of an allegiance as something that's more about borders and colors, if you see it as a pledge to be better people, to love in language and deed, to champion true liberty and freedom, then everything else, including national pride, fits nicely under that umbrella. We can love our country because it's lovable and lovely. We can have national pride without diminishing any other nation on the planet. We can take the best ideas of the founders and we can push those ideals to high places our founders might not have ever imagined. And I look out at you and I see a desire to achieve those ideals. I really do see the desire and the passion, the concern. You represent it. You're fighting for it. I get it. I like it. A lot of people wrapped in the flag, they want the country to look just like them. You understand, we the people means we want a nation that looks like all of us, this wide, wild spectrum of diverse humanity. It's a remarkable thing to see. You know what is right, you know what is wrong, and when your own tribe, your own nation is engaged in wrong, you know your patriotic duty, your true love of country, true allegiance means resistance, protest, discourse and argument about uncomfortable subjects, when warranted, dissent and pushback. You remember the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. from the Civil Rights Movement. He said, "I criticize America because I love her. I want her to stand as a moral example to the world." Patriotism in this country has so often required dissent and even disgust. Strong protest has so often pushed us out of some very dark ideas and bad places. Those opposing the slavery of the antebellum South were called un-American. Women of the suffrage movement were called un-American. Thousands who marched from Selma to Montgomery for racial equality were called un-American. Veterans and others who protested the Vietnam War were called un-American. Yet what could be more American than freely speaking up and standing up for what's right? There are thousands of protests that are being organized for Saturday the 18th, a few days away. The No Kings protest. Right now, it looks like there's around 2,500 separate protests, and that number is growing. We're going to see millions of people rising up all around this country and all around the world, taking a stand as we're doing here today, because who else is going to do it? We're the ones who must. And for that, we might be accused of betrayal. We're not patriotic. We're bad Americans. We're un-American, even domestic terrorist. You guys heard that term getting floated lately? We are all Antifa today, apparently. I told Nick on the way up today, I said, I wish I'd had time to go by and purchase a frog costume like the ones they're wearing in Portland right now, because apparently that's a symbol of the rebellion. Yeah. For what? Why are you and I domestic terrorists? Why are we seditious? Why is this heresy? Why should we be kicked out? Love it or leave it. Why? What's the scandalous position that we are taking? That the moment America becomes the Christian nation, it will cease to be America? For demanding fair and humane treatment for everybody? For wanting our courts to be about law, not ideology? For daring to challenge the boy king who has weaponized our house, the White House, to enrich himself while dismantling American democracy and decency? Eleanor Roosevelt famously said this. She said, "True patriotism springs from a belief in the dignity of the individual, freedom and equality not only for Americans, but for all people on earth." Henry David Thoreau wrote once, "Disobedience is the true foundation of liberty. The obedient must be slaves." One day, I hope to not have that feeling in my gut when I see somebody waving an American flag. I really do desire with all my heart to see the symbols of our nation restored to their true integrity. I myself am beyond taking national pledges. I'm not doing loyalty oaths to anything other than the truth and goodness. But I do wonder if the American flag might survive today's jingoism and truly, freely, one day fly again. A national banner, not a national blasphemy law. And a country that isn't a cage, signifying borders that aren't dividers. It is a desire, it is a dream, but until it is a true freedom, we will sit when we are commanded to stand. We'll be silent when we are told to talk, and we're going to speak out when told to shut up. We're going to read and share banned books. We're going to march when they tell us to stay home. We're going to resist when commanded to submit. We're going to love when we're told to hate. We will be men and women of open arms instead of closed fists. And we will do what true patriots have done throughout human history. We will speak and behave like those who are actually free. And I thank you so much for having me out today.
Keep that applause going for Seth Andrews. Okay, Mr. Andrews. I'm single, call me. Okay. All right. What? He started it. Powerful words, right? Give it up one more time for him. That was amazing. Okay, we would like to take a minute to recognize the people who made today happen, the California Freethought Day Planning Committee. I'm going to try to do this in one breath. Somebody watch. Amelia Lewis, Becky Mark, David Diskin, Emily Thompson, Jamie Snyder-Hernandez, Ken, I'm going to ruin your last name, I apologize, Nahigian, that, Louisa Morco, Marie Bain, Nancy Sneed, Nick Gray, Ray Howard, Ryan Drew, and Tom Ickelman. Give them a round of applause, please.